have some students here from Palo Alto College where I teach, and I've been really happy to work with Dr. Rojas's students on this collaborative online international learning COIL project. So this book, like I said earlier, I purchased from the Ota Memorial Museum of Art in Tokyo, and this is in Shinjuku. It's actually right next to Harajuku, where I know some of you all do cosplay. That's a famous area for cosplay. It's right in that area. So when we take our students shopping in Harajuku, because they definitely, a lot of them want to go shopping for all kinds of cosplay items and fun socks and everything pink you can imagine. Lots of kawaii items. But this museum is right there, and so we take them over there. And as you can see, ukiyo-e is amazing, intriguing, and beautiful. Okay. So this was an art form that its heyday was in the Edo period. Edo means Tokyo, during the 19th century. So I'm just showing a few of the most important. Utamaro, whom we have some prints of his here in San Antonio, actually, the San Antonio Museum of Art. And his prints were more focused on courtesans, geishas, and actors in kabuki theater. I'm sure most of you know this print by Hokusai, the Great Wave off of Kanagawa. That's one of, like, if you think of one artwork from Japan, this is what most people think of, and it is a masterwork. But he did a whole series on Fujisan. In Japan, you say Fujisan. They view the mountain as an entity, as a person. San is like Mr. or Ms. So Fujisan, some think that it might even be a yin-yang sign, have indications of it being a metaphor for the Taoist yin-yang. And then this is a lovely piece. And this one you can see gradations used, which is something I have used in my own work. My students were very, very privileged in 2016 to see the actual print of this piece. So Hokusai was known for landscapes. And then one more, there's many others, but we only have time to talk about just a few. Kuniyoshi, who's one of my favorites. He was one of the last greats of the Edo period, and I would say his work is very phantasmagorical. He was really interested in mythical tales and beasts and cats and creatures. So you can see some of his designs here. He did one of the well-known images you may have seen of a skeleton, and I have it in here somewhere, of the skeleton. But I copied it into the PDF that I shared with you all. Here it is. So that's one of his most famous prints. Okay, so lots of interesting ghost stories and all kinds of critters, beasties within Japanese mythology. Miyazaki's films at Ghibli Studio shows like Princess Mononoke and Spirited Away. I'm sure that a lot of you are familiar with those films. Address some of that. I also made copies of all of this for you all that shows the techniques that I'm talking about today. Okay, so you'll be able to look at this. I think you can order this book in Spanish. It was in many languages at the Ota Museum. So if you're interested in doing that, you could order it. Or go to Tokyo and buy it yourself. That's even better. Okay, I wanted to show this print, which I purchased at the Kyoto Handicraft Center. I'm going to take it out so that you don't see the glare. I made copies of this for you in that PDF. So I did a fundraiser. I printed an edition of silkscreens of a dragon on black paper, and I sold those, and then I was able to raise funds for my students to go to the Kyoto Handicraft Center. We visit Kyoto as well as Tokyo, and they were able to make their own woodcuts at the Handicraft Center. So that was really a special experience. They got to take home a really unique souvenir. But this is an actual woodcut that I purchased, a little tiny woodcut, and the artist is unknown, and the title is unknown, and it was printed around 1945, which, if you know some world history, that was a pivotal moment for Japan. And I think it's quite lovely, the gradation of the going from dark to light, and this woman just standing in the snow. And you'll notice the use of negative space. You see that a lot in Japanese art, much more so than in Western art, where you see an emphasis on the negative space and asymmetry, with the main focal point off to the side. Okay, let's get started with our demonstration. So I'm not working in the traditional sense of ukiyo-e. I'm using these processes to make contemporary art because that's what I do. And this is Sheena plywood, and I ordered this from McLean's in America. I can send the links to Dr. Rojas if any of you are interested in purchasing materials to do ukiyo-e. Ukiyo-e is more of a time period, a historical period. We would actually say it's more correct to say Moku Hanga. Moku Hanga is Japanese woodcut. So I thought this would be a good one to print today because it's a plant common in San Antonio and certainly common in Mexico, an agave. And I tend to use arbitrary color, so it's not the gray-green you associate with an agave. I did it in blue, and it's an important plant to me. Maybe some of you know the American writer Sandra Cisneros. In fact, she, I believe, lives in Mexico now. But she lived in San Antonio for a while, and I knew her, and she gave me some baby prickly pear plants and some agaves, and I planted them in my front yard. And unfortunately, those were the plants that didn't make it through the winter storm Uri. So these are sort of in homage to those plants that I lost. The Sheena plywood, you can buy it where you just use one side, or you can buy it where you use both sides. So my prickly pear print is on the other side. Okay, so I've got prickly pear on one side and my agave on the other. And I use tools, special tools, to carve both Japanese and American. So some of the tools that I used, I'm going to move this off to the side. So this is a very tiny V-gouge. And you can get in America these supplies from McLean's, but also Washi Arts, which Washi Arts is good too. So your better tools tend to have a metal separator between the wood and then the chisel or the gouge. Okay, so you can have tools that do different things. Actually, this is a knife. This is the gouge. Okay. And this is a chisel I just got from Washi Arts for carving out large areas, and I tap it with a wooden, a special wooden hammer when I'm chiseling out large sections, like so. Okay. And I have some larger chisels that are from Japan, and chisels can last a lifetime. So these are more traditional chisels, and this one is a V-gouge. So if I hold it up to the camera, you can see it makes the letter V, and then if I hold this one up to the camera, you can see it looks more like a U. Okay, so the V is for carving out thinner lines, the U is for carving out larger areas. And after these, the shaft of the chisel goes deep into the wood, but you keep like cutting it off and moving it back into the wood as it wears down. So some of your artists who specialize in this, they may have, after 20 years, they may have a chisel that's just that big, and they use it for many, many years. Now, the American tools that I use are called flex cut, and these are a really good tool. They bounce, so when you're carving, they have a bounce to them. That's why they're called flex tools. Okay, and they come in different sizes. So you can see there's the set. To make fine lines, this is like a knife where you would make fine lines. So I don't really have time today to show you like actual carving. We're going to focus more on printing. It takes some practice and years and years of learning how to do this effectively. But like I said, I'm a contemporary artist using these techniques in a contemporary manner. And I wanted to use this idea for this project because I was working on Kozo paper. I'm going to get set up for printing. Okay, this is like my registration area where I will register my paper, and it's big, so it's kind of hard to see. And I purchased this from McLean. Traditionally, you make notches in the woodcut itself, and you register directly to the plate. But what's nice about this system, if you buy the registration board pre-made, I can use more of my wood. I don't have to have a border where I put my registration marks. Registration is when you're lining up your paper to the plate, and if you're working with several different plates, that's essential. But even in this situation where I'm just using one plate, I want my borders to be even all the way around. Okay? Alright, so that's the plate, and I'm going to show you my inks that I will be using. I think we're just going to need to, I usually wipe my plates on other areas, so I keep this pristine. You can notice I've coated this in contact paper, so I can wipe it off and it doesn't stain the wood, which right now, I was printing the other night, and this container's got a bit of ink. So these little, let me put this up a little so you can see these little containers. These are just little plastic dishes that I special ordered. Actually, I think there's probably enough ink in there still. Just use that. Okay, this is essential to Moku Hanga. This is Yamamoto makes this wheat paste, and this is the preferable wheat paste to use. So I recommend this one. It comes in a in this big tube, and I would, if you're going to order supplies, get the big tube. Don't get the little one because you go through this really quickly. So I'll squeeze some of this out, and you can see it's like a it's wheat paste, but it's clear, kind of cloudy. And you want to add a little water to that. You don't want to use it just like that. So I have special, these are called hoboki. These are special brushes that I ordered. Traditionally they would have been wood, but these are for mixing my ink and mixing the paste. Okay. So I need to add a little water. And I like to work with a spray bottle. It's really, this process is very dependent upon finding the balance of water. Water on the plate, water in the paper, water in your inks, and in the paste. So it's to not overdo it with water, because I find quoting an American architect, less is more. So probably the biggest, that has some ink in it from printing, but that's okay, because I'm going to be using the same inks here. Okay, so I'm mixing up my wheat paste with some water. It should be like honey. You want it like honey. It's very important in printmaking, depending on what medium you're working with, what the consistency of the ink or other materials like this are. Maybe a little bit more. Okay. And then I have I'll go ahead and spritz these. We could use a little more ultramarine glue. Okay. And you want to lay your materials out in a logical manner. So I wanted to put my light blue there, then the indigo there. That's a mixture of black and indigo paint. And I'm using Aqua Color pigments, which actually a friend of mine in New York developed, Susan Rostow. You can buy them through Speedball. All your major art supply dealers in America tend to carry her printmaking inks. They're non-toxic, and she was one of the first to develop non-toxic monotype and etching and relief materials. Okay, so the next item that you need is you need something for mixing the paste with the ink onto the plate. And you can use regular watercolor to do this, or gouache. So there's some very fine makers, and especially from Japan, of those supplies. Holbein and Turner are both Japanese, and I recommend. So these are some brushes that you can use for mixing the ink and the paste on the plate, and I believe this is a mixture of squirrel Maybe there may be a little bit of hog bristle in here, but it's coarse. This one is the Maru Bake, and this is from horsetails. So it's very, very coarse, and these are only made from the tail hairs from a horse. So it's very, really, really coarse, and you have to sand this when you first buy them with something called, you either use shark skin or a synthetic material called dragon skin to just get the bristles ready for accepting ink. And it's also really important, and I need to do this, is to water seal these. And when you store them, you always store them with the bristles down, because if water gets in here, you can get really bad cracks, and this one unfortunately is already doing some cracking. And you notice I've got a piece of blue tape on here, and the reason I have that is because I'm going to use this brush for a blend. And so this tells me my dark color, which is this indigo, is going to go here, and my lighter color, which is this phthalo blue, is going to go here. So you want to, if you're doing a blend, you need to mark that with tape. I think that's the most effective. If you use any of these for black, you should only use it for black from then on. So if you're going to buy these, I'd get one for color and one for black. They're expensive though. I find washi, that distributor is the most economical I've found for these. These are cheaper, but these are the most effective. Okay, and maybe someday they'll come out with a synthetic version for the horses instead of using horsehair. But I haven't found anything yet. All right. Next, I'm going to show you this tool, and you don't have. And oh, that's what I wanted to say. You can also use shoe polish brushes. Some artists use shoe polish brushes instead of these. I haven't tried that yet, but that's what I've heard. And I believe this is called a hake brush, but I got this in Kyoto. You don't have to use something that's fancy. You can use just a brush like this. That's hog bristle, but it's got to be kind of stiff. This, I think, is hog bristle. And I use this for dampening my paper, actually, and then this I use for dampening my plate. Okay. So when I get ready to print, I'm going to wet my plate. In fact, we can go ahead and do that so that it dries out just a little bit before I get started printing. You don't want your plate sopping wet, and you need to give it a little bit of drying time. So like I said, less is more with this process. It's a very simple process, but it is exacting. The first time I did this, I had to pull 30 proofs before I was even marginally happy, and now I look at that proof and there's no way I would accept that in an edition. So last night I went through my editions and I eliminated over half of what I printed to be part of my edition. So when I price my editions, it's not just what you see, it's my labor of what I don't show as well, mastering my craft. So I just barely dipped into this water, and I like to use big yogurt cups for water. So I'm going to brush some water onto my plate, and it becomes quite lovely when you add the water. And you notice that blue tape there, that's to help me with registration. Here, let me try to get my camera so that it's square. Okay, that's better. Okay. So you want to stroke your plate very nicely. And you can see I also have, this is for rugs, to keep rugs from slipping. You want a non-slip material. And when you're carving, you want that too. If there's time, I'll try to show you what I use in carving. All right, the paper. So in the West, I mean, there are fine papers from the West, but in the East, paper is essential to the expression. And you have to prepare your paper ahead of time for this process. This is a plastic bag. We have these in the U.S. Hopefully you have them in Mexico. I find them very useful. They zip. And inside of here, I have a stack of paper that I have pre-wet. And I've had to stack 2 folded pieces of newsprint that are damp, and then 6 prints in 1 piece of folded newsprint, and then another piece of folded newsprint on top of that. And then it has to sit overnight. Some say 20 minutes, but it's really best if it sits overnight. And I find that I have to print within at least 2 days or it'll mildew. You can put it in the refrigerator to keep it from mildewing. And you want to keep this flat. If the paper creases while it's wet, the crease is permanent. I have another envelope for dry. So after I print, I have my newsprint, folded newsprint that I put my prints in. And it's, I like to put I was using sketchbook paper in between the prints so that they don't offset onto each other. So I recommend you do that, just from personal experience. Okay? And I'm going to open up my wet pack, take my paper out, and I'm first going to print on sketchbook paper that I've dampened because your first print should not be on your good paper. It takes a while for the plate to get used to having ink on it. Okay, and I need to speed up here because we're almost at time. All right, so I'm going to put. This looks good. It's got a sheen to it, and it's not over wet. So I'm going to take the hoboki and I'm going to put some paste. Now that's paste. It's not ink, even though it looks like it has a color. And you don't want to overdo it with this paste, or your prints can look, they can look clumpy, like the ink can kind of clump. Okay. Next, I'm going to start to add my ink. So I'm going to do first the blue. So I'm going to just put a little bit of blue, and you don't want to overdo this either, or the print will not be crisp. And then I have my indigo down here. Okay. And then I'm going to take this brush. Well, actually, I don't have to use this brush right now. I'm just going to use my rubaki. Okay. I'm going to move the paste into my ink. And this should be damp, but it should not be sopping wet, or it'll put too much water. Like if you cleaned it from the last time you printed. I've had that problem. Okay, so I'm going to move the paste, and I'm going to move in a circular motion. And I'm going to make sure that I tilt this so I'm only putting the blue down in certain areas. And then I'm going to move down here, and then I'm going to use the heel of the brush to make the dark areas of the print. Okay? And usually I wouldn't do this on my registration board because, see, it's putting some ink there. I'm going to move it up. But because this is special circumstance, I'll need to do it this way. Okay, and then I'm getting, well, a little bit more here. And when I'm proofing, I often have my, what's called a bench hook next to my printing area with my carving tools, because I have to, as I proof, carve out areas that I don't want to print. The raised areas, that's the basis of relief printing, are what print. Now I'm using the heel of my brush, circular motion, Okay, and then you do a last stroke where you just lightly touch the plate, kind of like you're petting gato, kitty cat. And this looks pretty wet. So I think my first proof, it's probably going to be too wet. Okay, and then I'm just going to use like sticky notes. Actually, I have some good paper in here. I'm going to make just some little tabs for myself, and I need to move this back. I often keep a little wet piece or a wipe that I can get ink off my hands, because I don't want to touch paper with ink on my hands. But you can make these, just fold some pieces of paper, and you can make some little like tongs to grab your paper, okay, and keep it clean. Okay, so what I was saying about the this is my newsprint that's damp, and see I have my paper, and you want to put your paper staggered. Okay, you can see how it's staggered, how I lined it up inside the little newsprint booklet that I made. Okay, and I'm using damp, just sketchbook paper. And then see how we're doing time-wise. We'll try to pull one on good Pozo paper. Make sure this is lined up, and I need to clean this off. Now for the beginner, this is kind of nerve-wracking to do this, but I find you curve the paper, okay, and then I have, when you hold the paper, you have to hold it in a certain way. Your index fingers, you hold your index finger on top, your middle finger underneath, on both sides. You need your thumbs free, okay? Your thumbs are going to register your paper. And I don't think in this view you can see it, but what I'm doing is I'm going to push my thumb here, and I'm going to register the paper. Here, let's see. Yeah, right there. I'm going to register the paper to the corner where I've made the tape marks, okay? So I'm going to lay the paper down, press my thumb down, and then I'm going to drop the paper. Okay, it's not perfect, but it's okay. Okay, I have I like to use on top these and you can't use wax paper. You have to use like a parchment paper. This I got from Japan. Okay, and I put that on top here before I start to use the bearing. And you can see I was printing, and I have that one that shows it. And it's best to spray this with a special oil. I believe it's canola oil that you order from. I ordered it from. I believe I got it from McLean's. Okay, but you can't just use like vegetable oil or something. You have to use this specific oil. Okay, the next most important item that you have are your bearings. Okay, and there's all kinds of bearings. The Han bearing is considered the greatest of all the bearings, and it's made from bamboo and laminated pieces of washi. However, I studied with John Lee, who's a professor at Trinity University here in San Antonio, and he is a master of Moku Hanga. He's nationally acknowledged as such. But he told me about these barons. You have to order these from Japan, a distributor in Japan, but they use a wire mesh, and all these little points, they touch the plate as you're printing and transfer the ink in onto the paper. This one is for details, so it's a tighter wire mesh. This is for more open areas, so it's a more open mesh. And there's a piece of acetate plastic that's disposable, and it just buttons on. And then this is leather, and that's just cardboard. But these are the best that I've encountered. So I start off with my detail one, and when you're doing this, you want to, as long as you have the non-skid pad underneath, it shouldn't move. But move in a circular motion, gently, and you'll start to see, even through the parchment paper, you'll start to see it transfer. And once enough ink's on there, it's not going to move. It'll stay put. The paper. Okay, now I'm going to switch to the other one, and this is the one that I find really transfers the image nicely. Yeah, I think my black indigo areas are going to be soupy. I can kind of see it through the paper. And then I can even do it, yeah, I've got some bleed areas like right there. You can even do it right on the back of the paper. And the thing about working with your Asian papers, your kozos and washis, you can see the ink. So you can actually get a sense for what's happening while you're printing, and I really like that. Your Western papers that are cotton rag, that's not going to happen. Okay? Okay, and you can take a peek at it and see if you think it's good, or if you need to rub more. Okay, so I'm taking a peek. It's light, but I would expect that with the first print. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pull my print. Okay, so you can see the transfer of the agave. I now have a blue agave that is using a blend, and it's it's pretty darn clean actually, given it's on sketchbook paper, and that it's the first print that I pulled. Okay, so I know that kind of looked easy, but there's a learning curve to this. So, but it has a different type of beauty than Western prints done with oil-based inks. I really like the lack of toxicity, and I really like the cleanup. It's very fast cleanup because it's water-based. So I haven't done detailed images like the little beautiful print I showed you from Kyoto yet, but down the road I'll be doing more detailed images too. Okay, so we have 1 minute. So Dr. Rojas, we can wrap it up now, or I can pull one more print on kozo paper. What would you like to do? Yes. Well, I can do one more print, and if you can stay, you can watch it. Yes. If anybody has, well, we're at time, but if you want to put questions in the chat, we didn't get a chance to do questions. So if you would like to put something in the chat, I can respond to you later through Dr. Rojas or just in WhatsApp. Okay. Gracias por asistir a mi conferencia.